a new successor in the ever-enigmatic Alien series, which theoretically purports to be the predecessor and ancestor of all modern-day Metarods. This is ALI04 Medalivore, with a completely brand new kit across the board of Level 8, Ghost Hammer, Ghost Vulcan, Float Legs, and the leg ability of Predominance, which is a brand new leg ability that, for the first time in the game's history, actually checks the enemy's metal level more than anything else, specifically when it comes to checking stats, with Predominance checking the enemy for a lower metal level, and if it finds one, buffs the user's leg stats minus armor and heavy limit up to 20%. Now, Metal Eater is a model that we've had in the game for quite some time, and any veteran of Medarot 9 knows just how vehemently brutal that model can be, either as mixed parts or as a pure set, because of just how powerful it is and the high base damage it can deal. But with this model designed by Horo Morin, and you can definitely tell it was designed by him specifically, basically picks up in every place where Metal Eater left off, both in sheer force, in high bulk, and just the sheer amount of high power output that it brings to the table. Level 8 on the head part is a brand new skill that's being introduced into the game. While it simply can be explained as a far more aggressive version of Level Drain, which simply just lowers the enemy's metal level by a certain number of levels, which thus reduces their efficiency, their heating, cooling, their power, and so on, and even their speed or defense or damage reduction to a point, Level 8 takes that an entire step further to further punish them when actually using the skill. Specifically, Level 8, upon attacking the enemy and breaking parts, will inflict said level drain, which again will drop about 30 levels off the enemy's metal, which is extremely potent and noticeable, but then will also buff all of the user's stats by 20% for their entire next turn. So not only are you punishing an enemy for basically being able to stand toe-to-toe with you, which basically everything would be since you're either at level 150 or now 200 if you overclock, but you're also not only debuffing them, but also going to further punish them with something far more aggressive, with a 20% all stats boost across the board to everything except, of course, armor and heavy limit, which is fairly easy to tell. But that alone also synergizes extremely easily with Predominance, since when attacking the target, you get another 20% to your leg stats on top of that anyway. So you're going to be even faster, far more aggressive, and much more likely to land far more painful hits on that next turn while you're recharging. Ghost Hammer on the right arm is basically just Ghost, but instead of having a piercing effect to it, it has an AoE effect, which means it'll damage all parts evenly and spread the damage across all active parts. But it is worth noting specifically what Ghost does, and it's the fact that it scales off the user's charge gauge. So the higher of a charge you have, the more powerful the more powerful the attack comes. But it's also worth noting that Ghost Hammer also has Defense Ignore. So anytime the enemy tries to reduce damage or try to wall you with sheer force, any resist stats that are going to be assisting them with keeping that damage low are entirely bypassed and will be eating the raw force of the attack to the face, period. And there will be nothing they can do to stop it. Ghost Vulcan on the left arm is basically the same thing in the same manner, but instead of having a piercing effect for a Ghost Shot, much like Ghost Shot, it has a scatter effect. So it will damage one part normally and then damage two others randomly at extra damage. So much in the same case as Ghost Hammer, it will have a scaling damage relative to CG and also have Defense Ignore. So it's going to be very strong and extremely potent in base damage no matter which way you look at it. But it is also worth noting, as far as what they both bring to the table, their heating and coolings are fairly low, at low 500s to high 400s to low 500s. So really don't expect to go anywhere anytime quickly when using these. And that is kind of to be expected, though, for a lot of high power attacks that Ghost Hammer, Ghost Shot, and so on do bring to the table. Float Legs means that Medalivore will have a solid A rank across the board with zero issue with terrain whatsoever. And that 10% across the board, and of course 20% S rank if you're on Cyber, will come in very handy with guaranteeing that he can keep a competitive edge both with speed, evade, and damage resist basically anytime that he's on the field. With a base mobility of 910, Medalivore is off to a fairly solid start in the speed department, so he does not need anything to really comp him in that respect. Although it would be nice to help give him a little bit of extra boost, doesn't exactly need it. An evade of 1203 is nice, as this means he can dodge or graze pretty consistently and fairly easily if he's not hit with a no dodge penalty from a cooldown. A melee resist of 1249 and a shoot resist of 1096 are kind of nice little middle numbers of where you want to be. It feels like this model is a little bit lighter in the damage resist compared to Metal Eater, who's been in the game for a little bit longer, but it's still a very solid, middle ground of where you want to be with those all the same. In the armor department, Medalivore is extremely bulky though, much like Metal Eater, with a head armor of just over 7,000, arms at 3359 apiece, and legs at just barely 6,000. So while it does have fairly solid resist stats, its armor is definitely going to be where a good chunk of its bulk is, and makes it very difficult to take this thing down to size. It is worth noting, though, that because it is triple heavy, it can be subject to anything with a gravity attribute skill, so caution is advised when going up against Medalivore. All this being said, though, as a pure set score, despite how potentially dangerous Medalivore is, I do have to rate it kind of a higher middle of the road 6 out of 10. While it can certainly do what it brings to the table well, between level 8 and Predominance synergizing with each other extremely well, it looks like it's going to be using Ghost Hammer and Ghost Vulcan more as punish moves, more than anything to scale off CG specifically. Unless, of course, you do pair it with a corresponding Hunter or Sniper nature metal to really get the best bang for your buck. But with that being said, though, it does make it really difficult to use if you want to use it at its highest potential, especially given that Ghost Hammer and Ghost Vulcan have very high power potentials because of the CG scaling. On top of that, because it is triple heavy, like I said, it does mean it can be clocked by anything that is using a gravity attribute skill, so do bear a little bit of caution if using Medalivore in the team, or if you are fighting Medalivore, gravity might just be your best friend. As mixed parts, I do have to rate Medalivore a little bit higher at a 7 out of 10 for these exact same reasons. While you can use it as a pure set fairly well as a level drain, level punish kind of fighter with that, and then any CG you get is just icing on the cake, being able to mix up the attacks across the team to suit your needs might be a far better way to put it. Perhaps even switching Ghost Hammer and Ghost Vulcan out entirely for other different types of punish moves, such as, say, CG drain if you want to really lean into that and make it a punish type fighter. Predominance basically is kind of mandatory that you are going to use level 8 or at the very minimum level drain somewhere. But given that level 8 does give you that all stats boost as well, it does kind of go without saying which one you'd want to use of the two.